Today's guest is Adam Barney. He's a leadership coach, a father, a husband, a caretaker, and a man who has lived through more in the last few years than most people ever talk about out loud. He's someone who has sat in the hospital room with his father, walked through chemo with his wife, raised 2 kids in the middle of all that noise, and somehow still found a way to build a life that feels grounded, intentional, and human. Adam talks about leadership, but not the corporate kind, not the LinkedIn kind, and not the 10 habits of high performers kind. He talks about the kind that happens in real life, in kitchens, in ER waiting rooms, in the middle of the night when you're exhausted and scared and still trying to show up for the people you love. This conversation isn't about frameworks. It's about identity, burnout, caregiving, grief, music, memory, and the strange, beautiful mess of being a person who's trying to hold it all together. Adam is thoughtful, open, and honest in a way that surprised me, quite frankly, and I think he'll surprise you too. This is 50 Tastes of Gray. I'm Matthew Gray. Let's get into it.
I call it constant controlled chaos, right? That's what it's like for me. And I used to think that chaos was almost an inconvenience, but now I actually think chaos is totally a truth serum. That being pulled in all those different directions as a caretaker is what we all go through. You know, you can't fake who you are when you've got a dog throwing up and someone is asking for a snack while you're also trying to remember what day it is. You become basically whatever you've actually installed in yourself going through that set of challenges.
Here I am thinking I'm a big shot, but you just told me that you've got a podcast. Tell us about yours.
Oh, thanks, Matthew. No, I do have a podcast. It's called Is Anything Real? And on that, I talk about reality first leadership, which is what I love to get into. It's guest led, just like here on 50 Shades. And I love bringing people on who talk about what the future of, leadership is, what the future of work might be, innovation. It's just a lot of fun to have those conversations and push some corners in 20 minutes, or give or take, and ask, for the myths and truths in leadership and some proof points.
Slight correction, Adam. It's 50 tastes, not 50 shades.
Tastes.
So where is your mind? In the gutter right now, I think.
It's Friday afternoon. I'm ready. I'm ready to maybe crack something open that's nice and cold. I'm sure maybe you are there on the other side of it in Hawaii, though.
Yeah, is anything real? No day drinking for me, buddy. If I flew you here tomorrow, you didn't have to bring the kids, the adorable children, or your adorable wife. It was just me and you. What would be the first thing you'd want to do when you landed here in Hawaii?
Remind me which island you're on, Matthew.
This is Oahu.
It's Oahu. I've never been to Oahu. I would say let's hop over to Kauai, because Kauai is the most magical place outside of going to the Cook Islands in New Zealand that I think I might have ever been in my life.
That's just such a funny thing. People always want to come here and chill and mellow out and sit on a beach, and I just don't get that.
No. I would want to go right over there to Kauai, the Garden Island, and go back and explore. It's one of the most beautiful places I've been. I actually love it.
Oh, wow. So we would have a difficult time playing and partying if you came to Hawaii and then immediately went over to Kauai, because I'd be here seeing concerts and hanging with the people. And
I would join you for the concerts, though. Yeah. Never been to Oahu, but I'm going to have to plan that at some point.
So, Adam, you got to tell me, what have you eaten today?
What have I eaten today? Oh my gosh. Today has not been a good eating day. I definitely started the day with my typical cold brew coffee that I make in my beloved AeroPress, which has changed my life in the last couple of years. But I had a protein bar. And then after, I had a leftover sad-looking tuna sandwich from dinner for one of my daughters on Wednesday night that was still sitting around in the fridge. This has not been the best eating day by any stripe that I've had in my life, or even this week that I've had.
Tuna sandwich for breakfast sounds like regret. I have to ask you about this cold brew thing. Doesn't that require a lot of time to be able to make a cold brew? You make it and then you refrigerate it. And like, I want coffee when I want coffee, like now.
Right.
So,
I stumbled across this a couple years ago, but it's called an AeroPress. It's basically a modern version of a French press. And I actually have gotten in a habit where I will brew it the morning before while my kids are eating breakfast. I'll grind the beans, put it in there, let the batch of it steep until nighttime, and then I'll press it. I double press it, and I put it in the fridge before I go to bed. So that gives me my cold brew for the next day, but it requires a planning and a routine, which is probably a little bit of how I work in the world. I mean, I grew up in a household with my parents, and we can't do this in this day and age, set all the clocks in the house 10 minutes ahead. And if my friends weren't there exactly on the time when they were supposed to pick me up, I would get irritated and get a little bit annoyed because they weren't there at the time they said they were going to be there. So I'm a planner, and I love that predictability in some ways.
An old friend I grew up with, her name was Mar. She was a militant vegan. And so one strike against her. And she was always late. She never showed up on time. Wow. So what we had to do is we had to kind of like train ourselves to tell Mar that if it's a PM get together, to tell her it was a 6 p.m. get together. So maybe she would make it. And then when she's continued that kind of kooky behavior, totally unacceptable, we would just leave without her. Now we have to get back to the cold brew. So you drink it cold? Is that, or is it just brewed cold?
It's it's brewed on the counter, and then I put it in the fridge so that it's nice and cold for the morning. And that is 365 days a year. You will never see me with a hot beverage at any point in time outside of maybe being very sick and wanting a hot toddy.
So this is highly unorthodox. No hot beverages. Why is that?
I just don't like them. They take too much time to cool down. I've burnt my tongue too many times in life. I like a good iced coffee. It keeps me good. I actually have a giant, I remember my mom used to brew sun tea in the backyard when I was a kid. And I actually now brew my own sun tea in the backyard. And we're turning the corner to summer here. And I finally found my jug where I brew my sun tea, and I put my first batch out there a couple days ago, and I don't have it in front of me, but I just had my first glass of that. I only drink cold beverages.
So are you heat averse?
No, I love hot sauce.
You like your hot sauce, but hot sauce is still served at room temperature.
Right.
But now as far as being heat averse, if the wife makes a beautiful soup and she puts it out in front of you, do you have to wait 15 minutes before you can eat it, or can you eat hot soup?
I will eat more than warm soup.
My dad was very similar to that when my mom would cook, and he was very heat averse to the foods that he ate. So she would put his food down on the table setting a half an hour before she called the rest of us to the dinner table. And so he can eat everything at a lovely room temperature. Being a professional chef all these years, hot food needs to be like super hot, like it just came off of Mercury. And cold food needs to be really cold. When you're in the kitchen, and I'm assuming that you cook occasionally and not just protein bars and tuna sandwiches.
A couple of weeks ago, I had it was a Lucky Charms latte. That's not exactly something that challenges me.
Lucky Charms as in the dry cereal?
As in the dry, mostly the marshmallows.
Oh, dear.
But, I mean, yep. That is something that I've recently had, and I'm not sure that I would choose it again.
Right. Sounds like you're leaning not.
It wouldn't be my first choice, let's say.
I learned so much about people because there's just so much emotion tied in with the whole food thing. And it really allows us to do what we're doing right now, which is getting down to it. So I wanted to ask you, what's the first thing you notice when someone walks into the room?
Oh my gosh, their energy, the energy level that they carry, the personality that they have. That's what it is. It's a complete energy match when they walk into the room.
Now, when you're talking about energy match, is that what you're saying, how you gauge yourself to when someone walks in the room, you try to match that person's energy?
I try to meet them where they are, but also
Uh-huh.
it's really understanding, who it's getting into this where I love to get into people's origin stories, right? I love to
Mm-hmm.
understand what the deeper level is here of where you come. And yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your identity in your business, what it is that you offer.
Yeah. So, I offer, I work in a transition leadership coaching role. I'm someone who spent 20 years, Matthew, in a nonlinear corporate marketing career. It opened up a lot of opportunity. At the same time, it wasn't where I wanted to be. I
Mm-hmm.
managed $100 million in paid ad spend, but I always felt like there was a missing piece in terms of leadership. And that's what I do these days.
What were the things that happened in your personal life that got you here?
Sure. So it'll be 12 years ago this November. I lost my mom to bulbar onset ALS. That was a very difficult situation, like anyone in this world goes through who loses a loved ones. But in that make your own glass half full mentality, had I not gone through that experience, it never would have opened up the doors that I found in terms of getting involved with both the ALS Therapy Development Institute here in Boston, but then also with a very interesting familial ALS study out of the University of Miami Neurological Department that now is led by who's recognized as the world's preeminent ALS researcher. And if I had never gone through that challenging situation of losing my mom, that would have never happened. I also, a couple of years ago, my father went through hydrocephalus, which of course was more recently understood as what Billy Joel faced, right? But
Mm.
that's too much pressure in the brain. That was in 2024. And I spent most of my time that year in and out of ERs with my father, helping him get through that. I am the older sibling in my own, nuclear family. I have a 5.5 year younger sister. That's been a challenge. And then most recently, actually, Matthew, when we first connected, I was down in the Dominican Republic, but we were
Mm-hmm.
there because my wife had completed chemo after finding out that she had breast cancer at the end of last year. So, but this is what we have in life. We face these challenges, and it's how we approach them and view them that changes the perception and the way that we move forward.
Adam, tell us how your dad is. Where is he right now and how is he?
Yeah. So he's at his new baseline of being stable, I'll say. But I lost my mom 12 years ago. He sold the house and it was too late, but it was also too early. So he's in a independent living facility at 72 years of age, still, pretty strong, and just trying to figure out this new, basically living like he did before he was in college, of living alone without a lot of things around him. And that's a place that he's not happy, but he's about 20 minutes away. So I get to see him a lot more frequently than I used to when he was still living in Western Massachusetts.
Is he able to get out and do things on his own?
He is able to get out and do things on his own. So he'll surprise our girls at the bus stop sometimes in the morning. He'll show up because we're a one-car household with his car and help, shepherd us around. He's a very important piece of the puzzle, and it's so much nicer having him 20 minutes away.
Right. So when you do the heart-to-heart with Dad, does he talk to you about his sadness and where his life is at this point, or is he starting to embrace a little bit of the good stuff?
He's always embraced some of the good stuff, and I think that's where I get it from. He's joked. He was, for a long time, a wealth management investment banker, and he doesn't get to do that anymore. But that perspective that he always had of this is all going to be okay continues to this day. Maybe he's lost a little bit of confidence and that's shifted around. And, maybe he isn't really sure exactly about where he's going in the future. He still jokes, and he still jokes being the youngest person in an old person home, which is something that I hope he never loses, actually.
That's so interesting. As you're growing up, for the longest time, you're the youngest person in every room.
Right.
And then as time goes on, maybe it kind of balances out. And then eventually you become the oldest person. So now he's kind of recycling that a little bit.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Which is what we do in this world, right?
That's right.
We recycle. Nothing is truly new, right? That's been created. We're just iterating off of things that previously have been done.
Catch us up a little bit on the wifey.
We took our kids to an all-inclusive, talk about a really interesting way to showcase a 6 and a 9-year-old what the world can look like sometimes. But she had finished up her 4 rounds of chemo and was a couple weeks out of that. We here in Massachusetts aren't just blessed with having 1 week of school break in the spring. We get 1 in February and 1 in April. So April vacation, we snuck away to the Dominican Republic. And that was a celebration for finishing chemo and kind of emerging out of the cloud of that phase of the journey in life that she's in right now.
How is she at the moment?
She's working in the office on the other side of the house, I think, with the 2 dogs with her, and picking up her work travel again. She just finished radiation, and it's another step in this journey of life that we face with challenges, and we just keep going.
I'm guessing that the choice to go down to the Dominican for treatment was a financially based one because of our cruddy health system we have in the U.S. Is that true?
I mean, it's a piece of the puzzle. She didn't actually get her treatment down there, but we were able to celebrate in a very cost-effective way the fact that she was done. And I mean, 2 kids who figured out that they can go to the bar and order Miami Vices sans alcohol. I could not tell you how many of those they enjoyed over that 4-day vacation.
So instead of getting the alcohol buzz, they were getting the sugar rush.
Yes, exactly. Now
tell me what Miami Vice. Now tell us what that is, because I'm an old fart. All I can remember is Shirley Temples and Roy Rogers.
So a Miami Vice is a mix between a pina colada and a strawberry daiquiri.
Fancy.
So it's actually swirled together, the red and the white, and it's not the fanciest cocktail you can have, but it works for what it is.
What it's like for you, having a dad who's gone through what you just mentioned, and your wife going through the cancer, and then the part of you that feels like it's a caretaker, and then you've also got children.
Yep.
And so you're watching over them, and then you've got animals, you got pets, you got these beautiful furry creatures.
Right.
What's it like for you having all of that static surrounding you?
I call it constant controlled chaos, right? That's what it's like for me. And I used to think that chaos was almost an inconvenience, but now I actually think chaos is totally a truth serum. That being pulled in all those different directions as a caretaker is what we all go through. You can't fake who you are when you've got a dog throwing up and someone is asking for a snack while you're also trying to remember what day it is. You become basically whatever you've actually installed in yourself going through that set of challenges. I have a mission in this world, Matthew, to bring more justice and equity. And I actually, on top of everything else that I do, would love to build an accelerator or an incubator program for people who have complex caregiving responsibilities. I would actually argue that people who have gone through that pull of different things in their life are much better equipped to build some business that's sustainable and manageable and helpful in the world. But they're not so many of the incubators out there for these recent college grads who don't have heartbeats that they need to care about. And when you have heartbeats you're responsible for, it just changes your perception on how the 24 hours in the day we have every day gets used.
How do you deal with it for yourself when life is getting so loud or is loud on a constant basis? You've got all these things surrounding you. How do you deal with it for yourself?
I've realized that in my practice, I call it energy debt that we accumulate. Right? It's a personal energy debt. So I spend a lot of time coaching people on this as well, but I've found those things that recharge my battery, that refill my cup, One of them that's so core to me, Matthew, is music. Actually, I have in our house, I have a brother-in-law who was one of the early employees at Sonos. So we have Sonos speakers all around the house. There's constant music in my life being played, but I actually have oh my gosh, in my basement, I have about 3,000 CDs, Matthew. And I would say 10 years ago, they released the full set of recordings from Woodstock. I think it's 30 plus CDs in this wooden box. I have that down there in the basement. I mean, that is where my head goes. I feel like I was born a couple decades too late, actually. Matthew, I still need to go to concerts. That's what fills my cup more than anything else. That keeps me going.
You know, it's amazing how music, food, certain scents, recollections of past encounters and things like that can just bring you back to that moment. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your work. You've spent years helping people. What's the part of leadership culture you no longer believe in that maybe was taught back in the day? So what's the modern take you have on that?
It's the fact that you don't have to work harder to achieve. It's not about working smarter, but it's using your time and what's truly inside of yourself to make a difference in the world. That's really what I've realized. I pushed really hard. I pushed until I was burned out. And that's not how we get more in the world. That's not how we achieve more. That's a way that we just get broken down.
You know, you were mentioning about burnout a second ago. You appear to be way too young to experience burnout. Tell us what brought you there and what that felt like.
I mean, it felt like, why am I doing this? Right? Why am I showing up every day? I have to say, I am 43 years old.
You're such a baby.
I don't think I look 40, even with 2 kids and 2 dogs. I don't think I look that old, but 43 years old. I've been through a lot of things. I've done a lot of different things. And, I realized
you're the youngest person in this room, just to let you know.
That is true. That is true. I have a Muppet up here. The Muppet is even older than I am, I would say.
There you go.
But I think I take a lot of accountability for the rooms that I've been in and the things that I've done. That's when I realized I love working with leaders who maybe don't look like me and don't sound like me, but they have incredible ideas and they can change the world. And that's how I can help make the world a more equitable place.
So this is fairly recent for you. So I have to ask you, what advice did you used to give when you were first starting a few years ago that you no longer do?
I think I used to give away more than I asked for back. And that is something I am training myself to do more of. I think we all have these self-saboteurs inside of ourselves. I realized pretty early on, and even before I started building this business, that my biggest saboteur was the pleaser, where I like to say, help other people out and say yes, 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 well before I ask for anything for myself. So that's the biggest shift that I've had to make, being a business owner who's trying to build this into a sustainable business with my Energy OS system. It's about saying I do have the permission to ask for this and I can do this. And this is honestly what I could do this with a blindfold on and my hands tied behind my back. It just comes innately to the way that I am and who I am and the way that I build myself.
So you created your own thing. You work from home, I'm guessing.
Yep.
I have to ask you, how do you quantify your successes?
I mean, it's about the ripples that I make in the world. A lot of people these days talk about legacy. I like to bring legacy down into just the ripples you can make in your community. And Matthew, one example, we have a neighbor here who grew up in a house around the corner from us. And his family had a fire in their house. And what do? I go talk to Tom. I, make sure that he and his wife and his son are okay. And then I say, hey, Tom, I have a book that I wrote, I'm going to drop, it's called this. It's what it deals with. Maybe it's something, if you want, I could drop a copy off. wrote a little note in the front, dropped it in his mailbox. And then I've heard from 5 other neighbors around me who go, I didn't know you wrote a book. And they say how much Tom appreciated that. So that's what I mean, Matthew, by the ripples that we can have. I mean, even at a more simple level, it's holding the door open for the person walking in someplace behind you. It's having a conversation out on the street with someone that you've never met before and just saying, I hope you have a great day. You never know what those ripples can emanate into. And if we did more of that in the world, our world could become a much kinder and more equitable place.
Is that stuff for real, Adam? Because a lot of people mention the niceties that you just did, but your world is kind of fracturing and splintered, and to have those kind of encounters and experiences is far and few between, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not, if you change your aperture and you change your view on the world and look a little bit closer, it's really easy to do. It's very simple to do, and it doesn't need to be anxiety inducing, and it doesn't need to be worrisome. And when you can start to feel confident and comfortable in yourself and basically not worry about what other people think, it's a difference. But that's such a great muscle to flex or a callus to build just for practice for things like that. And that's where those ripples come into play.
That is amazing. Okay, Adam, it's time to turn the tables. This is an opportunity for you, since you are a podcast host and this dynamic person you are, is to ask me a couple of questions that you might be interested in, and maybe something that will kind of like clarify a little bit of where I stand in relation to you.
Yeah. Well, and Matthew, I kind of want to ask, because you're the one who built this room. When you say appetite, contradiction, memory, what are you actually hunting for in the guests that you bring on?
I'm way more interested in finding out the personality and not the specialties of people that I bring on. It's about having you sit here at my table and be able to schmooze and play and have fun and laugh and cry together without really much recognition as to what your specialty might be.
And then I guess, what's the tell that someone is, let's say, about to stop being tidy, which I think happens in a lot of podcasting, and start actually being true?
You have to direct the conversation. You know this as a host yourself. You have to bring people out of their very well-rehearsed, crafted responses to things and ask them questions that there's no way that they can do that because they have no experience responding to certain questions as to, let's say, for instance, how did you feel about your wife getting cancer?
Yep.
Now, that's not something you can have rehearsed.
Right.
So that's what I do. I try to think of myself as a little bit of a conversational specialist when it comes to just getting to reveal people.
Does that relate back to your history and the nonlinearity of what you've done in your journey, Matthew, also?
As far as doing the show?
Doing the show, or where did that perspective come up in that? I mean, being in those rooms with those incredibly talented people in the world probably changed your perspective on how to use language and conversation. But how does that history play back into what you do on a day-to-day basis here?
I think because so many people have these crafted persona, and over time and throughout my life, I've seen that all too often because I was involved in the Hollywood world and the rock and roll world and so on.
Yep.
I became kind of sick of that. And so I wanted to find out, no matter how much digging it took, to what am I going to do here to get Adam to open up and or whoever it might be. And so it kind of stemmed from that.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. And food and fun weave into it also, right?
It does. And you were talking before about people pleasing, and it sounded like there was a small negative connotation related to that with yourself. For me, I've always kind of like taken that as like a seal of approval. It's like, yeah, I can take care of you and I can take care of the situation at the same time.
Right.
No matter how much I love pleasing people, I never looked at it as a downside.
No. And I mean, it's one of those things, I guess, the way I view it, it serves us really well in a primal human brain mentality, but in the modern world, if we lean into it a little too much, it can impede our our impact we can make, or the positivity that we can make in the world. And that's the only caution that I meant to give there in my own journey.
Right.
But, it's authentically being in those positions, in those places that's so much fun. I mean, but I love to have conversations with different people just like you do. And you never know what you're going to learn from someone else at any point in the journey. I have to say, Matthew, tying back to music, a couple months ago, just in my own podcast, I met a woman named Mari Fong, who is on the West Coast. She's a 30-year plus rock journalist. So sits in that camp of the passion that I have inside myself. And we really connected. She runs a podcast called Check Your Head that's about mental health for musicians and raising awareness of mental health for musicians. But we have now we text back and forth now. And that's because we just have such a passion and what's right inside the center of us that merges together, and that energy just builds things better. That's the incredible thing in this day and age when there is so much negativity out there in the world and there's so much bad stuff that comes from the internet. That's when the beauty of digital connectivity still comes together, is when you can bridge those conversations and bridge those relationships across endless miles or across the world.
I wanted to ask you, because you just mentioned that you and she text now. Do you remember the days before texting when people actually picked up the phone and said, "Hey, Adam, how you doing, man?"
I do.
Instead of doing this thing, everybody's got this computer attached to their end of their arm.
This is a fun one. So for our oldest daughter, who's 9, we just got her this thing called a tin can. So a tin can plugs in, it works off of the Wi-Fi in the house, but it literally is a phone with no screen on it. And she's only had this for about 2 weeks now. And it's amazing. She'll be home from school in probably the next 20 minutes. And she'll go up there, she'll check her voicemail messages on it. And then inevitably she'll try to call one of her friends, and they actually have a conversation. But it was amazing. I could send videos your way, Matthew, of the first day of this. And she's looking at this device and how do I dial the number? How do I know what someone's phone number is? How quickly she's been comfortable with just having the conversation again.
Wow. I remember the days when we used to attach tin cans with a string or a couple of cups. I mean, that was going back a century or so.
Right. No, but this has brought it back, though, to that simplicity and the fact that, you don't need to be on FaceTime and see someone's face. That's the incredible thing, I think, is that kids need more of. But as adults, when we can hop on platforms like you and I are right now, even, it brings the humanity together. And if you mentioned you called me before we got on and I was on Do Not Disturb mode, that's an incredibly powerful tool to take some of this digital noise away and get back to the simplicity. And even though I'm looking at you on a screen, I feel like we could be sitting across the table and maybe we'd be clinking glasses and eating something delicious. But that personal connection is still here, even in this room with no walls around us.
Tell me about when the kids are going to be allowed to have an actual smartphone.
I hope by the time that we think that they should have a smartphone, smartphones are going to exist differently in the world, actually. That's
okay. So what are you projecting out?
Answer. I mean,
you must have spoken about it.
We've talked about it. Probably 12 would be when we start to think about it. 12 or 13, but it's not going to... How to stop worrying about what other people think. It's not about what the other parents around us are doing.
Right. What about the kids? Are they pressuring you in any way? I want my own phone. Everyone else has an Apple or whatever.
Nope. They're not.
No.
So
okay.
We do a pretty to pat ourselves on the back or say that we're doing anything perfect in terms of parenting, but they don't automatically go for their devices, right? They barely eat. We don't even turn the TV on with them. At night when they get home from school. We put it in such a corner of our house that it isn't even what you see. So they're playing with their Legos. We're doing board games. We've got music playing in the background. I think that actually is a padded piece between the screens. Yeah. Is the fact that we can throw on As much as my oldest daughter loves Taylor Swift, a couple of years ago I took her to see Cyndi Lauper because Taylor Swift tickets were too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
She had a blast at Cyndi Lauper, but how did she get into Cyndi Lauper? It's through having music constantly on around us and having a diverse set of things my wife and I both enjoy that we expose them to. And yeah.
Okay, Adam, before we go into the impromptu promo, give us some parting shots as to a couple of thoughts that you would like to disperse upon the audience.
Sure. All right. I'm going to weave these into music because it's what pushes me, though, Matthew, right?
You bet.
There's a moment at shows, and I've experienced this so many times when the crowd wants the chorus, but the artist doesn't give it right away, and the crowd gets restless, and that restlessness is the tell. They didn't come for presence, they came for reassurance. And I've been both people, but that's the drift that happens in music, right? And then I also now look at my career as a festival wristband, right? I used to treat job titles like wristbands. If I had one right now, I'd feel like I belonged or I was in the right place, but that belonging doesn't come from access. It actually comes from being able to be yourself once you get that access. Last one I would leave you with is you could probably pick up on this earlier. I have this weird grief about paper ticket stubs disappearing because it is that proof that you were there and it's now trapped inside an app.
It just reminded me of the hundreds of millions of people who capture their life on their phones instead of with their eyes.
Yep. And
all these people are living through the memories that their phone captured instead of their own heart and soul. And that's something that is just funny. If you're in the middle of the Louvre and you've got people in front of the Mona Lisa, they're all doing this. They're all like, no one's looking at the painting.
I mean, I tend most mornings to walk the dogs. We live around an incredible cemetery built in 1836. It has actually the only running train line that cuts through a cemetery in it. But I take the dogs on a 3-mile walk. It overlooks what's called the Neponset River. It's hilly every season. It looks beautiful. And I don't even put earbuds in, being a big music fan.
Mm-hmm.
I just like to listen to the world around me and watch what's happening while the dogs are trying to get off their leash and chase squirrels. But it gives me some sanity. It gives me some space. It gives me some silence. And it also increases my grace for all the things that I can't control in the world that might be driving me a little bit down a negative path, right?
Right. Makes you a little nutty.
Right, exactly.
Okay, Adam, impromptu promo. This is your opportunity to tell the next person, maybe your buddy, maybe a cohort or a collaborator or your wife or your kids, and they say, what was that show you were on, 50 Tastes of Grey with Matthew Gray? What was it like? Why should we watch it?
Well, number one, I'll say, Matthew, thank you for letting me drift in here, right? It was a room that I was in because most rooms reward being clean, but this room rewards being honest and having that casual, collaborative conversation. So that's what I would tell them. And
so true. Adam, thank you so much for bringing yourself to the show today. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a good time.
I did, Matthew. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the seat.
Tell everyone where they can check you out, look at your website or your socials or whatever.
Yeah. If anyone wants to find me, I'm Adam W. Barney online. My website is my name. You'll find me on LinkedIn. And if you bump into my work and it's not for you, that's also totally fine. But if you're someone who's been performing coherence for too long, you'll probably recognize yourself in what I do. But again, Matthew, seriously, thank you for the seat today.
Why are you using your middle initial?
It's funny you ask that. A couple weeks ago, I was in an elevator pitch competition and I was asked the same question by the 3 investors after we got off the elevator and they provided the feedback on my pitch. So the W is important to me. It stands for Wellington. It goes back 5 generations on my paternal side of my family. And I am also the last heir to the Barney name. I am the only male heir to the Barney name. The funny thing with the W, it's a differentiator, of course, from a branding standpoint, but it's important to me because it's that middle name. It's so important. Actually, Matthew, before we had our kids, we got our first dog, and his name is Wellington because he's a male and he looks like he's wearing a tuxedo. He's a Basset Hound Poodle mix, and it's just the perfect name for him. So he's Welly, but Wellington lives on through how I use it in my own name, and then also our first dog, who is now 14 years old.
You see, you just answered the question why I do what I do is to get these kind of answers, right?
Right.
That's perfect.
Cool.
Hey, since you have so much Hawaii background and so on, tell everyone what the word aloha means and then bid everyone a beautiful aloha for the rest of their day.
I mean, aloha means hello and goodbye at the same time. And Matthew, aloha to you, and listeners, aloha as well.
Thanks, Adam.